I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. I will now conduct the roll call. Supervisor McGordy.
Here.
Supervisor Mulhern.
Here.
Supervisor Haschak.
Here.
Supervisor Jurdy.
Here.
And Supervisor Williams.
Here.
I would like to invite Supervisor Williams to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, moving on to agenda item 4A, which is the election of the chair and the vice chair of the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors for the calendar year 2023. Do we have any board comment to this item?
I have a motion. I move we nominate and elect Supervisor McGordy as chair and Supervisor Mulhern as vice chair of the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors for the 2023 calendar year.
Second.
Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, I'll conduct the roll. Supervisor McGordy.
Yes.
Supervisor Haschak.
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern.
Yes.
Supervisor Williams.
Yes.
And Supervisor Jurdy.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so at this point, I am taking over as the new chair. Thank you very much for your confidence in me, and I hope that I live up to your expectations, and I'm really honored to work with a great group of people, both on the board and in our CEO office and legal counsel and everybody else who works for the county. I never thought this would happen, but here we are. So with that in mind, we'll move forward with our meeting. I'd like to start first with a moment of silence for two souls that have been lost in this storm. We forget how dangerous sometimes the environment can be, whether it's fire or wind and rain. But anyway, two people have passed recently, and I'd like to take a moment of silence for them. Thank you very much. And just a reminder to everyone, do be careful because the storm track seems to be continuing, and we lived in a drought, and I remember saying back in September to the board when we were talking about emergency operations, we have to prepare someday it may rain again, and that day has come. Next on the agenda is public expression. I invite members of the public. I'm sorry?
Chair McGordy, it's Darcy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
CEO. If I may.
CEO Anta will invite Assessor, Clerk, Recorder, Register of Voters Katrina Bartolome to swear in Supervisor Haschak. Sorry, John.
Raise your right hand and please repeat after me. I, John Haschak,
I, John Haschak,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well
and that I will well
and faithfully
and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
I am about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can go on to agenda item number 2, which is public expression. We invite members of the public to provide comment on items of interest. Members of the public, please approach the...
I guess I'll go first. Good morning. My name is Ken Boudreau, and I want to give you a little bit of my experience and background. I spent 30 years in law enforcement, a lot of it in traffic control and traffic enforcement. I also spent 10 years with the City of Ukiah on Traffic Engineering Committee. I'm here to talk to you today about something that I understand the County of Mendocino is planning for the intersection of North State Street and KU-KI Lane. That's right in front of Burger King, the In-N-Out. I understand that they're going to put in a traffic circle or a roundabout there. There are some traffic circles currently in place. There's one right now in the Fort Bragg area at Simpson Lane and Highway 1. There are 3 more that I'm aware of on Highway 20 as you go through Lake County. All of those 4 have something in common. They all have 2-lane roadways going into them. The one that the county is planning on North State Street is a 4-lane roadway. If you travel through there, and I'm sure some of you have, you've known it in the morning, especially when school is in session, that the traffic backs up from northbound to southbound onto the freeway, onto Highway 101. In the afternoon, early evening, traffic going northbound out of the city backs up as far as the fairgrounds, and that's on a 4-lane roadway. The county is planning on funneling those lanes into a single traffic lane northbound and a single traffic lane southbound. Traffic is going to back up further than ever. The intersection is used by a lot of different vehicles, including many large trucks that make deliveries to various locations on the north end of Ukiah and into Mendocino County. It is also home to a lot of apartment buildings on the west side of North State Street. The people that live there frequently travel to and from the shopping center where Rayleigh's is located on foot. They cross the intersection using the traffic light. If this traffic circle is put in, based on what I've seen, there's still going to be a lot of foot traffic going through there, and with a new state law that says you don't have to use a crosswalk, it's going to be a disaster. I can see somebody getting hurt there right now. I'm here to urge you to use your powers as Board of Supervisors to make sure that this does not happen. A traffic circle there will be a disaster. It's going to cause massive backups, it's going to cause a lot of confusion, and it's going to be a big problem that you will have to live with, and I'll have to live with, because I live up in that area. I think a better cure for the problem might be to take the traffic light that is currently there at Kooky and State and modify it so that you have a time period that is a little longer for the traffic coming out of the shopping center and leaving Kooky Road and doesn't cause a backup. There are probably some other cures for it, but I haven't seen any, unless you want to make it a 6-lane roadway, and I can't see that happening. That's all I have to say. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, having a problem here.
Chair, I don't have any questions, but just a comment. In general, there's a difference between a traffic circle, which is what you sometimes see in a
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
There's a difference in design. There's a difference in design between a traffic circle, which are sometimes placed in existing residential neighborhoods with low volumes, and a roundabout, which is what Caltrans installs on state highways. So for higher volume streets, like a state highway, like you might have noticed on Highway 20, as you are in Lake County, I think it's approaching Upper Lake, that Caltrans has installed a roundabout there, and it actually allows for better flow of traffic and safer pedestrian crossings. But anyway, There's a difference between a roundabout and a
Yes,
traffic
I
circle.
understand, and I think the one that's the furthest east on Highway 20, that comes in with Highway 53, I believe,
Yes, that's correct.
that one is designed differently. I don't see how it would be possible to design one on North State Street at Kooky Lane that is similar to that. It would have to be more like the one at Simpson, or more like the ones that are on Highway 29 at Highway 20.
Well, thank you very much for your input. We need to move on, and I'm certain that we will revisit this as a board.
I hope so. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. John, you have a comment?
Yeah, if I could just say to Ken, could you please direct those comments to MCOG also? MCOG, the Mendocino Council of Governments. Okay, I think that would
I'm not familiar
be,
with that body.
okay, they meet the first Monday of the month at 1 o'clock.
First Monday
Right,
at 1 o'clock.
right.
And that is what committee again?
MCOG,
MCOG.
yes.
MCOG.
MCOG, Mendocino Council of Governments.
First Monday,
Right.
at what time?
1 o'clock? 1:30?
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair of the Board McGurty, members of the board, CEO Antle, and County Council Curtis. My name is Garrett James. I am the Acting Emergency Services Coordinator here in Mendocino County. I just wanted to provide a brief update for the winter weather storm event. On December 29th, around 9 p.m., the EOC was opened at a virtual level. Mendocino County has been holding daily internal briefings as well as operational area coordination calls with our partners in the county so that we can provide agency updates, prioritize and plan for what is to come, and address any needs or concerns. We've also been attending both regional and state operational area calls. The National Weather Service has been providing daily forecast updates, and we have placed sand and sandbags in areas of the county that have been forecast to flood. We are also working with PG&E to get some supplies that will assist residents that are affected by long-term power outages. We've been posting on social media with preparedness information, updated weather forecasts, and pertinent emergency information and resources. We have reached out to local radio stations to broadcast preparedness messaging, as well as sending press releases to the local media. On January 6, 2023, Mendocino County proclaimed a local emergency. As the forecasts show, there may be some more inclement weather on the horizon. We will continue to monitor the storm and respond appropriately. Thank you.
Garrett, I'd like to make a comment to you about the need for more information as someone who lives along the river and watches the water going up and down. And these events can happen very quickly. We need to find a way of being able to notify people. And the first event you talked about, people got stranded because the water came up very quickly and they had no idea that the river was going to flood, and they were not able to get home to across Perkins or Talmadge. So I'm hoping that we can do something about creating a better way of understanding what's going on with the Russian River, and we'll talk about it in the future, I'm sure.
Thank you.
CEO
This is
Antle?
Darcy Antle, CEO. I just want to make a comment. We will have more discussion on item 5A regarding this item. So more to come on this. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to make a comment? If not, we will go to Zoom, and Michael Katz has his hand up. Michael.
Good morning, supervisors, county staff. This is Michael Katz, Executive Director of the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. Wishing everyone a happy and healthy and safe new year. May we all have a more prosperous year ahead than we had the year previous. Unfortunately, I am calling in today with an alarm to raise the alarm about the status of the LJAGP program, the Local Jurisdiction Assistant Grant Program, which, as this board may recall, there is $10 million in direct grant funds sitting in an account now for nearly a year that is intended to be distributed directly to operators to help them transition from their provisional licenses to their annual licenses. In December, the Cannabis Department was directed to bring a application guideline for the grant program to the next Mendocino Cannabis Department meeting, which was scheduled just a few days after the board, the General Government Committee meeting. That meeting was canceled. Then there have been no subsequent meetings. And I was informed that the next meeting, which is happening on Wednesday of next week, will not actually have the application guidelines presented as well. The Cannabis Department Director indicated that that application is supposed to go back to the GGC before it can come back to the board. And so as we have discussed previously here, there is not an ability to discuss cannabis items the day after the GGC has seen it. So if we do in fact have to wait for this application document to go to the GGC on the 23rd, and then it can't come back to the board until February, we're still looking at an immense delay in these critical funds that are basically just sitting there. Initially, the applications were supposed to open in the summer of last year, and here we are, 6-8 months later, and we still haven't seen any of those funds distributed. The direction that was given was not to provide the application guideline document to the GGC for review. It was to present the application guideline document at the next MCD meeting and then bring it back to the GGC for continued conversation. So unfortunately that hasn't happened. And the longer it takes to get these funds out to our operators, the more challenging it's going to be for them to try to get through this process that's already incredibly challenging. So I urge this board to take action in identifying the delay in the application guideline document and urge that the submission process be opened immediately so that operators can access these funds that have just been collecting dust for 6 to 8 months. Thank you for your help.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other Zoom comments? Okay, barring none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. Let's see, items 3F, 3G, and 3H need to be adopted as revised.
Move approval of the consent calendar as revised.
Is there-
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion by other supervisors? If not, call for the vote.
Public comment.
Oh, public comment,
Yeah.
sorry.
Is there any public comment in the room? Seeing none, any public comment on Zoom, raise your hand. Also seeing none. Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Williams, seconded by Supervisor Mulhern to adopt the consent calendar in full with items 3F, 3G, and 3H being adopted as revised. Supervisor McGorty,
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern,
Yes.
Supervisor Haschak,
Yes.
Supervisor Jurdy,
Yes.
and Supervisor Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Moving on to the next agenda item, discussion and possible action, including adoption of resolution ratifying a local emergency related to December 22nd to January 23rd winter storm event as proclaimed by the Chief Executive Officer, Director of Emergency Services countywide. And with that, Darcy Antle.
Thank you, Chair McGorty and board. Nice to be with you today, the first meeting of the year. We will be giving you a brief update. I know Garrett just gave you a brief update. And I would ask the clerk to bring in Sheriff Kendall, who should be on the line, as well as Becky Emery, Tony Rakes, Janelle Rao, for some brief updates of the work that we've been doing. As Garrett mentioned, the EOC was opened on January 30th, and we had been monitoring the storm since January 27th.
Do you mean December?
December, yes, sorry. It's
No
not that late yet. Yes, thank you so much. And then we started meeting with our op area partners, and that includes the fire districts, the cities, tribes, Caltrans, Cal Fire, PG&E, and other partners that we work with on a regular basis. And those meetings were held every day, including over the weekend, so we could get updates and have a pulse on what was happening in this county. There's been a great collaboration, and we want to thank all of them for their hard work as we continue to work through the next week or so of these heavy rains. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Sheriff Kendall for any other additional comments.
Thank you, CEO Anhill. Chair McGorty and members of the board, as Chair McGorty mentioned this morning, we have had a very tough week, and we've lost 2 souls in Mendocino County to the storms that are going on. We've had some very good successes, but those came at a cost. And I believe that we're working right now kind of at a top-notch level with all of our partners in the fire service, local and volunteer firemen, as well as the state fire agencies. I'm hoping that our messaging is getting out, and based on what I'm seeing, I believe that the public is carrying a big portion of this load with us, and I appreciate that. Just a few things that I want to go over just really rapidly. We are not out of the woods yet. The ground is soaked. We still have that burn scar up on Forest Highway 7 and every place that was impacted by the August fires. And we don't know how that is going to react as we get further into the year with ground saturation and snow. And so I think that now is a good time for all of us to stay on our toes and really pay attention to these things. Department of Transportation, Caltrans, and all of our partners there are doing an incredible job, but they're doing it at a cost where everyone is pretty much working around the clock as we get battered and then it dries up a little bit. Anyway, I wanted to say thank you to all of our partners. And I think that we're going to get through this and come out the other side a little stronger than what we were. Thank you.
I would also like to invite in Howard DeShield from DOT for an update on roads. While we wait for Howard, Janelle, would you, I don't see Tony, would you like to give an update on the microwave?
Sure.
Tony is here in the chambers.
Janelle can go next.
Janelle Rao, General Services Agency Director, and congratulations, Chair McGorty, and welcome in your new role. This real quick, like from a logistics side, we have been supporting the event, sandbags and sand when necessary, and assisting OES with the deployment of that. We will be assisting in receiving some goods from PG&E that will be deployed to our citizens as far as emergency backup and some kind of preparedness bags. Additionally, we've been monitoring our public safety communications microwave system on and off. We've had 4 to 5 of them on generation power, but have had no disruption or interruption in that communication system. But as mentioned by Sheriff Kendall, we're prepared. We have learned over the years, fortunate or unfortunately, with the many disasters that we've faced. So I do believe that the infrastructure that the county has in place is holding strong, and that the investment this board has made in that infrastructure is most definitely paying off. So thank you.
Mr. DeShield.
Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Howard DeShield, your Director of Transportation, good morning. I came in person because my daughter gave me this new tie for Christmas, and she was anxious to see me wear it. And I refer to the Ukiah Daily Journal this morning, where Sean White says that the rain we have is a good start on solving our drought. So that's the drought side of this, all the rain. That said, the crews countywide have been responding to these storms since the week between Christmas and New Year's. Today, their big effort is working with a contractor, which we will bring a retro contract back to this board because they're on emergency right now. They're trying to clear Fish Rock Road, which is our last big obstacle. I just would like to say, for the benefit of the board and the public, that people need to drive slow on our roads out there all around the county. Everything is saturated, and just a little bit of soil falling off the bank can plug a ditch, send water across the road. So you really need to slow down and be prepared for localized flooding. With that, I'll take any questions.
Ted, is this in reference to Howard?
No, I have a comment.
Okay. you want to go ahead and make it now? Or?
Yeah, so I appreciate Sheriff Kendall's words. What I saw during the storm was with 200 separate power outages, 200 separate causes, both government and private industry crews working hard in cold and wet conditions late into the night. And I also want to remind us, dispatchers were likely also overwhelmed. They had an enormous call volume, a lot of information to keep track of. And as much as we want to say it's government's job to keep everyone safe, in a rural county as sparse as Mendocino, there has to be some personal responsibility. There will be downed power lines that are not being observed, that haven't even been found yet. Those power lines may still be energized, may not be safe to drive over. I see those wires and think of it as a death wire. And I've driven over them, ironically, on fire calls trying to find the downed power line, driving over one at a different location. It's really hard to spot. The best thing to do is if you can stay home, off the roads, wait out the storm, wait until the conditions are known to be safe. I know that's not always the case, but I saw a lot of people out driving around and felt uneasy that it's a numbers game. Eventually, somebody's going to run into a live wire.
Thank you. That's very wise advice, and you know, watching along Old River Road with the various slumps and trees down and everything else, I appreciate Director DeShiel's work. I know that he and his crew are extremely busy, and also Sheriff Kendall and CEO Antle and I have been in contact about the ups and downs of the Russian River and wanting to be sure that people don't get cut off from their homes. But that is the best advice, is stay put if you can. You know, make some provisions to be sure that you don't have to leave the house every day if you can. As we work through this kind of...
Chair McGorty, I would like to ask Director of Social Services, Becky Emery, to give an update on our preparedness and the work that her team has been doing out in the communities.
Sure, go ahead.
Good morning, members of the board, Chair McGorty, CEO Antle and County Council. My name is Becky Emery. I'm the Director of Social Services, and this disaster has been devastating to our team in social services, losing one of our members. I appreciate the connections of our staff and compassion and support that's being provided. During the disaster, we provided shelter support when people are not able to occupy their homes. At this time, we have not had to deploy any of the shelters. However, throughout the event, our team has been poised to respond, as well as community partners such as Mendocino County Office of Education. I also serve as your liaison to emergency medical services, and I appreciate our community EMS partners and their efforts to ensure not only increased staffing, but proactive staging and alternative routes, as well as responding to all calls for service throughout this event. The collaborative efforts have been tremendous throughout all of the last 2 weeks. Last night, Supervisor Williams, thank you so much for bringing forward a situation to my attention in which collaboration of Sheriff Kendall as well as Chief Suddeth on the South Coast were significant to the ongoing medical needs of a family in our community. And it's these situations and collaborations that are key to the ongoing support, safety, health, and well-being of our community, and I am proud to continue to serve in this capacity.
Thank you, Becky. At this time, I would like to add that the state of California has declared a state of emergency, as well as the federal government for the state of California. At this time, those state of emergency declarations are only providing resources and equipment and things like that that we may need to respond. There is no confirmation of any type of reimbursement for our emergency response, our roads, but we will continue to work with our state and federal partners to report out the damages that we are seeing in our county, and I'm sure the other counties will be as well. At this time, I'll turn it over to Sheriff Kendall for any additional comments.
Well, as we continue through this, you know, we've got some very good news. A lot of our water storage is filling up. That is coming at this price. And, you know, we are lucky enough to live with the Pacific Ocean right on our corner there. But every once in a while, she stands up and gives us a right hook. And that's something we have to live with. I would like to just kind of echo what Supervisor Williams had to say about if you don't have to travel, please don't travel. And we will continue on our call volume, and dispatch went from an extremely high call volume in the mid 300s down to, you know, kind of in a more acceptable level in the 200 calls per shift range. And as we move forward on this, we will continue reaching out to our community partners, our tribal partners, and all of those folks who have been so much help to us so far. Thank you.
CEO Antle, any other comments?
No, at this time, we'll turn it back over to the board if there's any additional questions and ask you to approve the recommended motion.
Okay, so is there any other additional comments from people in the room?
Chair McGordy, members of the board, CEO Antle, County Counsel Curtis, Tony Rakes, I'm the IT Division Manager here at the county. I won't, in the interest of time, I will make my update brief, as Janelle Rao, GSA Director, had covered most of our radio communication sites. I just wanted to take a moment to say how proud I am and how much I appreciate the efforts of all the staff here and in the community and all of our partners in responding to this event. And for the IT department or the division here at the county, for how much effort has gone into the planning and response to these sorts of emergency events, and to the county and the board for their investment in the infrastructure that helps keep these critical communications running. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from board members?
Move the recommended action.
Supervisor Haschak, comment?
Yes. You know, in our consent calendar, we had a drought declaration, and now we're seeing that the state is declaring an emergency for this flood situation. And I think that with the climate change, and we're seeing this kind of whiplash, and it doesn't mean that one rules out the other or nullifies the impact of what the drought was at this point, because we're going to have to keep preparing for these drought situations and deal with the crisis of the flooding at the moment. So it's kind of ironic that we have the two going on at the same time, but that might be the reality we're living in these days.
Yeah, very good point. You know, I think the drought's over when all the reservoirs are full again and the groundwater is recharged, and we certainly aren't there yet, but you're right. And again, a discussion we had in September, and we talked about how future rain events are going to look like this, that they can be rather severe and dramatic when they happen. There may be more time between them, but we're certainly seeing the weather be extreme. Although I have to say, personally, it reminds me a lot of going to Humboldt State in the 1970s and having it rain every day for about 2 months. This is what Northern California winters used to look like. So in some respects, it's not too surprising, but I think the severity and the fierceness of the storms is something that seems to be we're not used to anymore. Any other comments? All right, if not, we'll call for the vote.
Supervisor McGordy?
Yes.
Supervisor Haschak?
Yes.
Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
Supervisor Jurdy?
Yes.
And Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Chair?
Yes.
Procedural question. Is it possible to vote by the button since we're all here?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not sure that at this point we have reconfigured all of the buttons to accurately display on the screen
Okay.
due to the changes in seating.
I retract my idea.
Good idea. Maybe by next meeting, if we're all here. All right, agenda item 4B, discussion and possible action, including adoption of the 2023 Board of Supervisors Master Meeting Calendar. Supervisor Williams.
Yeah, I think it looks like a good calendar. I move the recommended action.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? If not, call for the vote.
Public comment.
What's that?
Public comment.
Oh, public comment. Is there any public comment on the proposed calendar?
No comments in the room, but it looks like we do have one online.
Okay. Michael Katz?
Yes, good morning, supervisors. This is Michael Katz, Executive Director for the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. Regarding the calendar, currently it appears that, as was discussed last year, right now there are monthly meetings of the GGC at which all cannabis items will need to be discussed before coming to the board. Given the very short timeline between now and July 1st, where there are major state deadlines coming up for the renewals of our local applicants to get their even just provisionals renewed while they're still working towards their annuals, and understanding the significant issues that the vast majority of applicants are having still getting through the program, it is requested that the GGC meet more than once a month, potentially twice a month, at least for the first 6 months of this year, so that we can really focus on the issues that are essential to help getting as many of our locally licensed operators through this program as possible, especially because items discussed at the GGC meeting cannot be then discussed at the next Board of Supervisors meeting. There's a very limited number of times where this board will be able to decide very crucial issues that will essentially determine the future of the licensed cannabis operators in Mendocino County. That is all going to happen within the next 3 to 6 months. And while, yes, there's a lot of stuff that will be happening at the state level, we need to do everything we can here at the local level as well. And so we sincerely request that an additional GGC meeting be added, so 2 per month at least, leading to the first 6 months of this year, leading to the state deadline. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any additional public comment? All right, if not, I would invite a motion.
I move the recommended action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the recommended action.
Supervisor Haschak,
Yes.
Supervisor Jurdy,
Yes.
Supervisor Williams,
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern,
Yes.
and Chair McGorty.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, well, we're moving right along. So, agenda item number 4D, discussion and possible action including appointment of standing committee members pursuant to historical practice, adoption of the resolution regarding board standing committees for 2023, and adoption of the standing committee master meeting calendar for 2023. Mr. Williams.
Move the recommended action.
Supervisor Haschak.
Since, I was on the cannabis ad hoc committee for 3.5 years, and then it got switched over to the standing committee, which I was totally a proponent of. I think that, and my district has, the majority of the cannabis permits or people in the cultivation program. I think that either we have the option of switching cannabis over to the standing committee dealing with resources, or I get switched to the general government committee to be able to work on this, because I think that, like Mr. Katz said, we do have an intense 6 months ahead of us to make sure that the cannabis program is dealing with all the people in the program and trying to get them to their state annual licenses. So I'm requesting that either we move cannabis over to the other standing committee, which I'm on currently, or I get switched to the cannabis general government committee.
Who is appointed to the general government committee?
Chair McGorty, yeah. So in light of Supervisor Haschak's comments and the fact that as I look at the other appointments that are on the list, where it's recommended that I be on the Public Safety Committee, I would agree with his comments that I think the most logical thing would be for me to switch over to the Public Safety, Health and Resources Committee, and Supervisor Haschak to move over to the General Government Committee.
Okay. Comment from other board members? Is anyone in favor or opposed? County Council Curtis?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I just want to note we do have one carryover referral on the General Government Committee related to cannabis from last year to the next. We may need to look at whether that item would have to be broken off and handled separately to the extent that there's a potentially continuity issue. I don't know that that would prevent the assignment or prevent cannabis from being handled by that committee overall, but we may have to look at whether that one discrete item might have to be separated out.
Okay, that shouldn't be a big issue, and I take it. So would that mean that last year's assignment would continue for one more meeting to finish it?
I don't know that it's a one-meeting issue. Frankly, we would, my understanding is the issue had been mooted based on the assignments as proposed. We could spend a little bit more time looking at it and sort of what's the best practice and mechanism. What it might be is that essentially you might have to create a third committee just to finish out the one item, or have the full board take up that item. But I don't think it's a one-meeting issue. I think we're probably looking at a few more, just given the complexity of the item.
Okay, Supervisor Williams?
Yeah, I'm going to support. I want to support Supervisors Haschak and Jurdy swapping positions. County Council, what's the cleanest way to accomplish this?
At this moment, what I would suggest is simply that you give us a moment to look at how to handle referral on the vegetation modification, that it be sort of withdrawn from the General Government Committee for the moment, and we'll come back with a recommendation at the next meeting.
So moved.
Public comment? Anyone in the room? Otherwise, on Zoom, we have Corinne Powell.
Thank you. Good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. I want to impress upon the board, I think you're moving in this direction, but it's critical that the cannabis community and the surviving stakeholders have the benefit of the supervisors who are most familiar and have been most engaged with cannabis decisions and policies and procedures. So I wholeheartedly support the transfer of Supervisor Haschak and Supervisor Jurdy. Thank you very much. I hope you will approve that.
Thank you. So next on the line is Michael Katz. Michael, are you there?
Yes, good morning, supervisors. This is Michael Katz, Executive Director of the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. Similarly, support the addition of Supervisor Haschak to the General Government Committee. The vegetation modification item was something that was also discussed at length with the ad hoc committee. And Supervisor Haschak does have experience in that arena as well. So it would be, my hope that the committee would still be able to address that issue with Supervisor Haschak as part of the conversation. Any information that was at the last meeting, I imagine, could be presented, but there's still a lot of work to do. And so I think it's important that his voice be included in that conversation. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to working with the GGC this year to correct the direction of the program and to move things towards getting people through. Thank you.
Thank you. Phone number ending in 5225.
Good morning. This is Hannah Nelson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I concur with the last speakers, and in particular with respect to the vegetation modification issue. Supervisor Haschak did have quite extensive experience in looking into some of the issues and understands them well. As County Council indicated, if it's not going to be just a one-off, which I concur, it is likely to take more than one meeting, then I do believe it's appropriate to carry over that issue or terminate the prior service of the General Government Committee and start the new service with the issue coming back at its current state and that would be proper. Otherwise, as suggested, it certainly could come before the entire board. However, given the board's prior desire to have things run through the General Government Committee and get it to a point of recommendation by that committee for the full board, it seems that there's quite a few details still left to be worked out that would benefit from the robust guidance of the General Government Committee, and that Supervisor Haschak and whatever the new configuration of the General Government Committee is going to be would benefit from participating in that conversation. The other thing related to that is that those issues are intimately related to other cannabis ordinance issues. So it's important that we deal with everything in the context of all the cannabis related issues, because when we peel them off and treat them as separate, individualized silos, sometimes we fail to see the unintended repercussions of other aspects of the ordinance that are related. So that would be another reason to have the new General Government Committee configuration go ahead and take up the veg mod issue and terminate the prior configuration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So do we have a motion on the table right now?
I'd like to revise my motion if I
Okay.
may.
Would you please?
Yeah, I move the recommended action amended to reflect Supervisor Haschak serving on general government instead of Supervisor Jurdy, and Supervisor Jurdy serving on public health, safety, and resources instead of Supervisor Haschak, and direct staff to bring the cannabis veg bod back to the full board.
Is there a second?
Commentary. I think we're going to end up hearing all the public comment here anyway, and all 5 of us will be deciding the issue. We might as well hash it out together.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Any additional comments? Okay. Call for the vote.
Supervisor Haschak,
Yes.
Supervisor Jurdy,
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern,
Yes.
Chair McGorty,
Yes.
and Supervisor Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. We will back up to item 4C, which in my inexperience I skipped. We'll fix it now. So item 4C is discuss and possible action, including adoption of resolution adopting the Board of Supervisors rules of procedure.
Move the recommended action.
Any discussion? Supervisor Haschak.
Yes. One of my issues has been, transparency, accountability, and reporting out from our ad hoc committees. And according to Rule 29, all committees shall report to the board following each committee meeting. And Rule 31 is status reports from ad hoc committees shall be made to the Board of Supervisors at each regular meeting. So, I think that this is really crucial to open government and making sure that the people and also the other supervisors know what the ad hocs are doing. And so I think that the board has been a little remiss and lax on these 2 recommendations or procedures. What I would like to see is we either do it once a month and just say the first meeting of the month, every ad hoc will report out. Or we just say we are not going to do that, we're not going to follow those rules, we're going to go in a way that's not transparent, not accountable. So I think that the best way to do it would be to just say the first meeting of each month, every ad hoc is going to report out.
Okay. Supervisor Mulhern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I spend a considerable amount of time preparing my report out from both ad hocs, standing committees, and other assignments each month and submit it to the second Board of Supervisors meeting. So I just want to be very clear that I've spent an entire year making sure that I'm doing that, and it's not been recognized. I don't know that any of my colleagues have read it, but I will continue to do that because I do agree that it's important that it's transparent, and it's also an opportunity for me to share that information of the meetings I'm attending with the public. I understand, Supervisor Haschak, that you've had some questions about this for quite some time. I just wanted to say that for me, using the opportunity to submit it in writing in the second meeting, I think has worked well. My constituents have appreciated it, and if the board members were to read it, then they would know what my report outs are.
Supervisor Williams?
Yeah, I would like for us to, as a board, recognize Supervisor Mulhern for following through. And I have read her reports, and it's kept me in sync.
And I have as well, and I've even commented. You write good reports. So, but I guess the question is, are we comfortable with us submitting our own individual written reports, or as Supervisor Haschak is suggesting, should there actually be a brief report out every month on activities of the ad hocs? Supervisor Williams.
It's often hard for a supervisor to get an item on the agenda in a timely manner because our meetings are so packed. And I've watched other Board of Supervisors conduct their meetings in much less time, sometimes half a day. They show up prepared, they've read everything in the agenda, they're coming to discuss and vote. So I would like us to accept Supervisor Mulhern's suggestion that we continue with the written reports. We don't need to use valuable meeting time for what could be submitted in writing.
Supervisor Jordy.
Yeah, so I think maybe also there might be a third way, which is if there's an ad hoc committee that's meeting on what might be seen by at least one other board member as a pressing issue, I think that board member probably ought to speak up under matters from board members and just ask the ad hoc, have they met recently? Do they have anything to report out? So, for example, Supervisor Haschak, you've wanted to know more about what the budget ad hoc maybe was discussing. So that might be an issue that might come up. If you don't hear from the budget ad hoc, maybe you should just, at once a month meeting, simply ask the budget ad hoc, do they have anything to report out?
The only thing I see a possible issue with that is being able to think on your feet of everything that you might have discussed, and budget ad hoc is a good example. It's often a complex meeting. I'm wondering if we couldn't come up with a simple template that we could all use for our ad hoc so that we make sure that we hit the key points, when, what, where, and why. Supervisor Haschak, you're thinking more about this?
Well, I think that when we have a discussion, and even if the report is, I'm on this ad hoc, we didn't meet, that's fine. Everyone knows what's going on with that ad hoc, even though, the board set up the ad hoc to do this work. But if the report of the ad hoc is, oh, I'm on the tax sharing agreement, and we met with the cities and we're moving forward with some ideas. Well, we can have a kind of a brief discussion and everyone knows what's going on. Well, what were those ideas? What was going on? Where are we with it? How long do you think it will take? Those kind of questions that I think would really benefit the board and the public. So I just think that the written reports are great, but we haven't all been following it. And I think that if we do it publicly, just quickly, succinctly, that it will be better to serve the public's interest.
Supervisor Mulhern.
I think I agree with Supervisor Williams that I don't want to hear during a meeting that an ad hoc didn't meet. That's not a productive use of staff time or the public's time or anybody's time. I think it is, it's on the website. We all receive during the meeting, during this organizational meeting, which ad hocs, which committees we're on. And if there are questions about what's happening, then there is a standing agenda item where that can be asked by any supervisor. And then there can be a report out. And if a supervisor were to miss something in the report out because they were maybe caught off guard and not prepared to report out, then I do believe that there is a mechanism for sending an email to the full board and perhaps adding it to the agenda or adding it to the next agenda. Hey, I missed this during my last report and I just wanted to add it for comment, so then that supervisor can relay that to the full board.
Supervisor Williams.
Call the question, subject to public comment.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Supervisor Haschak, you have one more comment you'd like to make?
Well, yeah, I guess that when we look at the rules of procedure, numbers 29 and 31, are we going to just act like this written report is good enough? Or do we modify those rules?
Supervisor Williams?
The motion was the recommended action, so we would leave it as is.
So I see it as two possibilities here. Certainly, written reports are great, and I agree with Supervisor Williams and Mulheron that it's very time efficient if we write a brief paragraph. We also have the option under Supervisor Reports, I think, to report out if you think something important is happening with the committee you're on. Is that correct? Am I procedurally understanding that? So I think we do really have the ability to report out if it's important to you specifically for your ad hocs that you want to share with the board, things you think are important that are noteworthy. Or on the other hand, you can demur if you feel like you don't really need to say anything further. It's in the report. I kind of feel like it's covered. So with that in mind, call for the question.
Wait a second.
Yes, we
I'll
do need a
second.
second. Okay. So I have the recommended action, mover Ted Williams and seconder Supervisor Mulhern. Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
Supervisor Jurdy?
Yes.
Chair McGorty?
Yes.
And Supervisor Haschak?
No.
Motion carries with Supervisor Haschak dissenting.
Okay, so we just checked with staff. It's 10 o'clock. We could take a break. We're moving along at a good pace, or we could move on to the next agenda item. What is your pleasure?
I would defer to the clerk of the board.
Clerk of the board?
Atlas.
I would say we could probably get through 4E and 4F rather quickly. I think they're all pretty well sorted out.
All right. Well, next we'll move on to agenda item 4E. Before we go, do you have a question or comment?
No on 4E. I was going to move the recommended
Okay.
action.
All right, we'll just wait. All right, first I'll read it. Discussion and possible action regarding Mendocino County appointments to the Public Policy Facilitating Committee pursuant to the Memorandum of Understanding among the United States Army Corps of Engineers, National Marine Fisheries Service, and Sonoma County Water Agency. And this is the executive office. I don't know who would wish to speak to this. I can if nobody else wants to. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised to see this on the agenda. I mean, this. Oh. Clerk.
This is Atlas Pearson, Senior Deputy Clerk to the Board. Essentially, this is a regularly occurring annual item that we appoint to. They have not met in quite some time, but it is one of those things that we appoint to in order to cover ourselves in the event that that body does need to meet. This is just reaffirming the existing appointments, so we would be reappointing the members who have already been appointed.
Okay, and this has to do with the Endangered Species Act and the listing of steelhead and coho salmon as threatened in the Russian River, and in the event that National Marine Fisheries Service has to hold a biological opinion hearing, this is the group that would be involved in hearing it. If you're wondering what this group actually does. Okay, Supervisor Williams.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Call for votes.
Public comment?
Public comment. Sorry.
I see none in the room and none online.
Okay.
Supervisor Haschak?
Yes.
Supervisor Jurdy?
Yes.
Chair McGorty?
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
And Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. So agenda item number 4F, discussion and possible action including approval of board special assignments, appointments as recommended by the chair of the board.
Move the recommended action.
I'll second, but I think Supervisor Haschak should also be appointed to the Great Redwood Trail Agency if he's still interested.
Yeah, there was a slight change because the Great Redwood Trail has been created as a new committee. Supervisor Williams?
Yeah, the maker of the motion would like to modify to reflect the revision to include Supervisor Haschak on the Great Redwood Trail.
Okay, any further comments? Supervisor Jurdy?
Yeah, just one question. I'm going on a couple of additional committees this year, the Public Safety Committee, which is new, and also I'm going back on MTA. I'm just curious on the NACO assignment, if Supervisor Haschak, I know he's been attending by Zoom quite a few of their meetings, would you prefer to be the voting delegate and I could be the alternate?
Yes, that would be fine.
Which body was that?
Okay, Supervisor Mulhern?
Oh, I guess I have a question for legal counsel or CEO Antle. So I was the NACO alternate last year, and I'm on several committees. I'm on 3 different committees, Health and Human Services, the Arts, as well as the Women's Organization. So can I still attend those meetings and participate?
Supervisor Mulholland, you could continue to, as the alternate. I was just looking at the recommended committee assignments. I
Sure.
actually wasn't advocating to be as the alternate at NACO. So if you want to be the alternate, that's fine with me.
Okay. Yeah, it wasn't on the revised, so just wanted to check about that.
Okay, Supervisor Williams?
Yeah. Amending my motion to include Supervisor Mulhern as the NACO alternate. Just a second of the...
Yes.
Atlas Pearson, Senior Deputy Clerk of the Board. So I want to verify. So what we have is going to be the revised special assignments roster with the following revisions. Appointed to NACO, it will be Supervisor Haschak as the appointee and Supervisor Mulhern as the alternate. When it comes to the Great Redwood Trail Agency, Supervisor Haschak will be the appointee, and there will be no alternate.
Yes.
No.
The Great Redwood Trail Agency has 2 appointees.
Okay.
And it has been Supervisor Haschak and myself, and formerly the 2nd and 3rd District Supervisors. Great Redwood Trail Agency is formerly known as the North Coast Railroad Authority. So,
So Haschak and
we
Mulhern.
are not alternates, we are both just appointees.
Cool. All right, I believe that I have all of that recorded.
Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, then we're ready to take a vote.
Can I get the second again? It moved rather quickly.
I agree.
Chair McGorty,
Yes.
Supervisor Haschak,
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern,
Yes.
Supervisor Jurdy,
Yes?
and Supervisor Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, we'd like to take a break for 10 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, and we'll see you back here about 10:15. order, and we're going to move on to agenda item number 4H, discussion and possible action including adoption of a resolution and approval of memorandum of understanding between County of Mendocino and the Mendocino County Probation Employees Association, Teamsters Local 856, for the term of October 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, and side letter of agreement between the County of Mendocino and Mendocino County Probation Employees Officers, Teamsters Local 856. Executive Office, CEO Antle.
Thank you, Chair McGordy. I believe Deputy CEO Sherry Johnson is en room to provide the update.
Yes, good morning. Deputy CEO Sherry Johnson. Good morning, Board. Happy New Year. Yes, the Board of Supervisors negotiating team has met with the representatives from Mendocino County Probation Employees Association, Teamsters Local 856, and have reached agreement regarding the appropriate terms and conditions of employment. And this proposal includes a 2% cost of living increase effective first full pay period following a Board of Supervisors approval, increase in longevity, change in the term date from October 1 to June. To the end would be September 29th. It's been changed to the end date of June 30, 2023. There was updates to pay premiums, increase in clothing allowance, and there was no increase to the health plan premiums through June 30, 2023. Thank you.
Okay, board comment. Let's start with Supervisor Jordy.
Sherry, can you just clarify, are you saying that the existing term contract had the contract expiring at the end of September and now it's less than a one-year contract now?
That's correct. They've asked to be in line with the rest of the other contracts.
Don't know if that's good or bad. It's just different.
Okay, Supervisor Williams.
Well, June is quickly approaching, and as I understand, our books are not closed. So, I fully support this. Both sides worked really hard, but just seeing it on here, it highlights to me the urgency and the crisis we have with our books not being closed. With that, I move the recommended action.
Hit your button.
Second.
Any other further board comment? Any comment from anyone in the room?
Good morning, Chair McGordy, board members, Eisen Locatelli, Chief Probation Officer. I just want to quickly acknowledge McP for their work to get this done and the board. I've sat on both sides at this point of negotiations. It's never an easy process. It's also not easy with what the county is facing fiscally. I know this isn't a reflection on probation or McP. I know that if the board had the money and with the understanding that there would have been more concessions or more opportunities for wage increases, that isn't the current state of the county, but it isn't a reflection on this board or the Probation Association. And I want those probation officers that are watching today's meeting, I want them to hear that from me. And that will continue to work to make sure that retention and recruitment are a priority in this county. So just appreciate your time and your work on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Chief Locatelli. It's much appreciated. Supervisor Haschak.
Yeah, I'd just like to reaffirm that I think that the board has total faith and appreciation of what the probation department is doing and the officers in that department. Certainly the negotiations have been difficult and it might not be what everyone wants, but it doesn't mean that we don't appreciate you at all. We very much appreciate all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Is there any public comment online? So I just would like to echo what Supervisor Williams has said. It's very difficult for us to negotiate when we're not sure what's in the bank account, and I'm hoping that we get a resolution promptly and that in the future that our financial information is very clear and transparent to all, because we can't be good decision makers ultimately we're charged with managing the public's money, and we need to have good information to do that, and it's absolutely critical, and at the moment it's not happening. Okay, so we have a motion? Yes, okay, so let's have a call for the vote.
Supervisor Haschak?
Yes.
Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
Chair McGorty?
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
And Supervisor Jordy?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so what shall we do next on the agenda? So are we looking at agenda item 4I?
4G.
4G. Okay. And agenda item 4G is discussion and possible action, including presentation of the draft 2023 legislative platform and referral of the 2023 legislative platform to the General Government Standing Committee pursuant to the Board of Supervisors Rules of Procedure. Darcy Antle?
Oh, thank you. I see Karen Lang on from Shaw and Yoder. Briefly, I think Dylan Knowles is in chambers to be able to do an introduction. So Dylan, I'll turn over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Darcy. Good morning, Chair McGorty, supervisors. So we are working on the 2022 Lake Platform update, and for the most part, we are moving along rather good. We have received a lot of information from most of the departments, with Health and Human Services no longer being Health and Human Services, and we're going to Social Services, Public Health, Mental Health, Environmental Health. I am working with them later today to try and move that along a little bit quicker. The other department that I know is working on stuff, but we haven't received anything from, is cannabis. And then with that, we have a couple of things we're going to add into our priorities and focus areas, which are going to be the public records request and homelessness. And then with that, if there's no questions, I'm going to pass it over to Karen Lang. She has a little presentation about the 2022 recap and can answer any questions that you guys might have also.
Okay. Karen?
Chair McGorty.
Well, good morning.
So just briefly, I wanted to just make a couple comments before the presentation. So at the General Government Committee, I had pointed out that federal tax code gives an incentive for people to convert housing into short-term rentals. And I'd requested that we have a bullet point advocating a change to federal tax law. And I think a simple sentence to that effect could be added to near the bottom, as a bullet point near the bottom of page 10. So maybe while the presentation goes on, maybe Dylan and others could work on a simple sentence to that effect.
Absolutely. I had been looking to just get more information on it overall, to have it a little better detailed, but we can add something simple if you want. Not a problem.
Okay, Karen.
Okay. Well, good morning. Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Chair and members. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Certainly, while you all have been at work this morning, there's been a lot happening here in Sacramento. And so when I first prepared for this with Dylan, we were going to cover what had occurred in 22 and then in the 22-23 budget. But the governor late yesterday announced he was going to release his proposed 23-24 budget at 9:15 this morning. And he's just wrapping up his press conference, but I wanted to actually start with that because what's coming is actually very important for you to know as counties. Very notably, the overall size of the proposed 23-24 budget is $297 billion. That's with a B. And of that, there's about a $22.58 billion shortfall that the governor needs, that he's got proposals on how to close. And I wanted to start with the very top, which is that he is not proposing to draw down any of the state's reserves to cover that shortfall. And that's really important to know because he's got to do it other ways. And also, I think by and large, folks in my world were expecting to see them propose to draw down at least a portion of the surplus, which speaks to the fact that this is probably not a one-year problem if he's not proposing to spend any of it. Essentially, the way he's proposing to close this $22 billion shortfall is about 4 different ways. Most importantly, some near term spending delays. So for example, in public health, he's proposing to delay the community healthcare workforce expenditures out into a future budget year. He is proposing to slow down some of the expenditure plans that he had so that the revenues that they're holding on to can be used to cover ongoing current year requirements. And then there's going to be some reductions in what they had planned to spend overall. And that together adds up to $22 billion. So they're not drawing down any of the reserve. And of course, things that counties really care about right now, he is not proposing to reduce any of the homelessness funding that has been going out the door. Certainly in last year's budget, the expenditure plan for homelessness had been adopted as a multi-year plan, and he's not proposing to change any of that. So the funding you were counting on getting, you'll still get. There is going to be a proposed series of rules about accountability, and I think that's probably something you all are aware he's trying to double down on anyway based on that meeting he had in December, but he is not proposing to actually reduce homelessness. And then he's also not really reducing very much in the way of housing grant funding, which has been a critical tool for local governments and your nonprofit partners to build affordable housing in your communities. He is reducing a little bit of funding, $100 million from CalHome and $250 million in the Dream for All housing programs, but otherwise the funding is going to continue on. And again, this is always an opening offer and the legislature gets to respond to that. He's also putting in $93 million into fentanyl and naloxone distribution programming to deal with the opioid crises. And then he's going to be moving the zero emission vehicle funding from the general fund and start drawing it out of the GGRF fund, which will matter, for example, to your public work, well, the entity that does your contracting to, deal with your fleet and such, because public agencies are now under the gun to start acquiring ZEVs yourselves for your fleet. And so that matters where the source of funding comes from, because as everybody knows, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is a constant source of dispute in the legislature about who gets what out of that fund. And of course, there's a small amount of it that goes to CAL FIRE to fund fire suppression activities, for example. So there's, more folks competing for that pot of funding, which isn't necessarily great, especially if you're mandated to acquire ZEVs. There are no cuts to Medi-Cal, including the expansion proposals to cover all adults regardless of status. There's no cuts to higher education, no cuts to the universal TK program, but there is going to be more delay there, which the governor was asked about right before I switched over to join this. There's no cuts to the behavioral health continuum. The commitment on Care Court continues. It's a little less than $100 million to fund the judiciary and counties startups. Are not in cohort 1, but that's an important thing for counties to be aware of, is that the governor maintained his commitment on Care Court. And I think that's about it as far as the big bright lines that I wanted to communicate to you. And of course, a lot of what I just reported to you is predicated on the budget that we're in right now, which I was originally going to talk to you about. Many of the items that the legislature approved in 22-23's budget were actually multi-year expenditures. And so they kind of do what I was going to talk about actually is sort of complemented by what happened this morning, because the way he's closing the gap is by making some changes to the multi-year expenditure plans that he had, and that's where he's getting some of the money from to cover the gap. And so now what will happen, and your county administration staff has already received a couple of emails from us this morning that has the little less than 200-page budget summary of what the governor proposed, and then a slide deck that the governor provided as part of his PowerPoint presentation this morning. And we will continue to send additional information as the day unfolds and we get our hands on more of the materials that will explain this initial cut at the budget. What happens next is that the committees in both houses will divvy up the sections of the budget based on subject area, and they will start having hearings in February and March. And of course, once we see the May revision numbers, that's where things get pretty serious as far as trying to cut to a final deal on the budget package that would go to the full legislature by the middle of June. But again, the legislature has a lot to say about what's coming. And so this is just sort of an opening offer. And to the extent that anything I've just said is alarming to you, it's the very first step, and your legislative delegation is pretty fantastic, and I'm sure they'll be very interested in what your thoughts are about what has been proposed. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and if you'd like me to cover more of what had happened, I'm happy to do that, but it seemed more important to let you have this fresh take on the new proposed budget.
We do have some questions. Supervisor Mulherin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I don't have questions for you. I thought that this item was coming to the second meeting in January, and I actually have some additional changes.
If I may, this is Darcy. You guys are muted in chambers.
I have some additional changes that I'd like to make to our local legislative platform, and I believe that there were some more updates that needed to come from the cannabis program. So before we get too far into the discussion and public comment, I think that we can note that those changes need to be included in the legislative platform, and it will go back to the General Government Committee and then come back to the full board. And I do appreciate the presentation today.
Okay, Supervisor Williams.
I want to support Supervisor Jurdy's one-liner about not giving an incentive to short-term rentals. Is that something we could do together here so that we can approve this?
As CEO Antle, yes, it should be on the, Tim, can you share your screen now?
Dylan?
He may not have the page 10 where we want to put it. I think he only has the table of contents up right now. So Tim, you'll have to go in there if you would like to. Do we want to go to the actual page and add it on there now?
Can we jump to page 10?
Supervisor Haschak, while we're waiting for that to come up.
Am I muted now?
You're on.
I'm on? Okay. So there were two issues that CSAC has been dealing with about public records requests and also flexibility for hybrid Zoom meetings. And it seems like some of the flexibility is going away in February. Has that been addressed at all by the governor? Certainly with the public records request, we've seen a great increase in the state, from people requesting materials. And I was wondering if there was any movement on that front.
It would be all right for me to reply?
Sure.
Sure. Yesterday, in the weekly meeting of the county legislative advocates, the Public Records Act issue came up. They're certainly aware of it, and it's obviously become more and more challenging for counties to respond. I'm not aware of one set proposal to try to provide some relief, but it is definitely something that's discussed, and I will get back to Dylan with if there's going to be a specific author that has been approached to carry legislation on it. I did not hear that yesterday in the meeting, but the Public Records Act issue was certainly raised, as was the expected expiration of the remote meeting provisions. There was legislation 361 that had this authority to run concurrent with the emergency. The one thing I would say regarding when it expires is that the governor, in the budget summary that we sent this morning, said that he anticipates that the federal government will extend the federal emergency 2 quarters. And so to the extent that that emergency is extended and the state follows suit, which I think they would if for no other reason than it provides additional resources to deal with the public health impacts. If it's extended, then the ability to meet remotely is also extended. On the other hand, I would say the legislature has been largely unsympathetic to making these types of meetings for you all more permanent, because the legislature doesn't get to enjoy that, and I don't think they have a lot of sympathy, as far as I can tell from watching. There were 5 bills on remote meetings and the Brown Act process, and then it went to really 361 was the main bill that got through. And so I just, as much as I think there's appetite in local government to allow this to continue because it has worked fairly well, I don't think the legislature wants to pass more legislation on that end, unless they're included, and I don't know that they would truly ask to be. So I don't want to dash your hopes too much, but I think the best shot that you would have for being able to continue is actually if the pandemic emergency is extended.
Okay. Any additional comments on that?
No.
And it looks like we have page 10 up if we want to do ahead and make
Yes.
that change.
Whoever's managing that, can they enlarge the screen so we can read the text? So during the discussion, I did email staff my suggested, and I think it gets to the point, advocate for a change in federal tax law to eliminate current tax incentives for short-term rentals, as these federal tax incentives are leading to the conversion of housing from year-round residents to a commercial use for housing for the purpose of short-term rentals for visitors.
And you just sent that just recently?
During the discussion, yeah.
Okay. I can go ahead and add that on there once I get back to my desk.
Okay, Supervisor Williams.
I move we accept the presentation of the draft 2023 legislative platform and refer the 2023 legislative platform as amended by Supervisor Jurdy today to the General Government Standing Committee, recognizing the General Government Standing Committee will add additional items.
I'll second, and I do see public comment online.
Okay. Any public comment in the room before we go to public comment online? Okay, seeing none, we will go to public comment online. Michael Katz.
Good morning, board. This is Michael Katz, Executive Director of the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. Unfortunately, the first part of Supervisor Mulhern's comment was not able to be heard from where I'm viewing the meeting. So I'm not 100% sure if it was discussed that at the General Government Committee meeting in December, MCA provided a list, which we resubmitted for this agenda item to everyone today, of items that all but one that were adopted or approved by the GGC to be added to the platform. So it's just our hope that when this document if this isn't it being finalized, that it is finalized with those items included, and that all of those be explicitly communicated to the county's lobbying body to engage on those recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, I believe that concludes public comment. So we have a motion on the floor. Atlas, can you restate the motion?
So the motion right now is accept presentation of the draft 2023 legislative platform as revised during the meeting and refer the 2023 leg platform to the General Government Standing Committee pursuant to the Board of Supervisors Rules of Procedure.
Okay, call for the question.
Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
Chair McGorty?
Yes.
Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
Supervisor Haschak?
Yes.
And Supervisor Jurdy?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Very good. All right, so we're kind of shifting up our agenda a little bit. So are we ready for agenda item 4I? Okay, all right. Agenda item 4I is discussion and possible action regarding construction of the new jail building, including acceptance of latest cost estimate reflecting a new total project cost of up to $36.9 million, and direction to staff regarding additional general fund cash match needed in an amount estimated at $1.43 million. Supervisor, Sheriff, Coroner, and Executive Office.
Darcy Antle, CEO. At this point, I will turn it over to our Deputy CEO, Steve Dunnicliff, to introduce the item and the individuals that will be assisting. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Deputy CEO Steve Dunnicliff. And as your board is aware, the county received a funding commitment of $25 million as a maximum award from the state for construction of a new jail facility. The project is adjacent to the existing jail facility, and it will provide housing, programming, medical and mental health treatment space, along with a new public visiting center. Housing will include 60 maximum security beds, a safety cell, recreation yards, central control and medical exam room, dental exam room, clinical suite, program and group rooms, and staff support space. Costs of the project have steadily increased over time, with the most recent project cost estimate now showing a total of up to $36.9 million, including contingencies that were built into the budget. While we won't know the actual cost of this project until bids are received, it's reasonable for the county to begin planning now for the increased local match that will likely be required. In addition to the sheriff and staff from General Services, we have with us today Eric Fadness from Knockton Lewis, who has been providing architectural design services, and Eric has also been a regular presence for the board to this point. We've also included Deborah Marinazzi from Vanner Construction. Deborah has been assisting the county as our construction project manager, and she's going to become a more visible presence to your board as the project continues. At this time, I'll turn the item over to Eric Fadness, who will be explaining for the board the latest cost estimate and next steps anticipated with this project.
Good morning. I'll share my screen here first. Hope everybody can see that. Well, good morning, members of the board. I'm Eric Fadness with Knockton Lewis, and I'll start my report with you today by reviewing our milestone schedule. Since our last update to you, that I believe was in June of last year, we've updated the milestone schedule. We've cleared a significant hurdle with the State Fire Marshal's Office, which gives us approval and permits us to proceed with construction of the facility. So that's a major hurdle that's been achieved. However, to get to that approval, we did see a delay of about 4 months from the last update. So we are now looking at approval by the State Department of Finance to proceed with bidding the project in April of this year. So, whereas we had projected that to occur in December of last year. So, you can see by the milestone schedule here that we're looking to receive bids in May, by late May, and then award the construction contract in July with a notice to proceed on July 25th, approximately. Okay, just get on the right screen here. Okay. And as Steve noted, I'll look at costs here now. But as Steve noted, we have updated our cost estimate, and current construction costs have increased. That includes updates to the unit pricing for materials and labor to the current market costs. We are also projecting an increase in the project soft costs for a total project cost of $36.9 million. as you'll recall, there were also included in your budget off-site improvements related to parking needs that will be basically the parking that will be displaced by the new construction. That parking will be made up with the project that will be, I believe it's underway now. Also, as Steve pointed out, the state is reimbursing 25 million of the project costs. That's through the SB 844 legislation and your conditional award for that reimbursement. And to date, the county has committed a total of 10.7, nearly 10.8 million in cash match toward the project cost. Having said that, you will note that on the slide here that there is still a funding shortfall of approximately 1.4 million. Now, included in our estimating contingencies, just to remind you, we are still carrying a design and estimating contingency of about 6%, a construction contingency of 7%, and a geographic market factor of 6.5%. And that market factor reflects what may be anticipated for the bidding climate, perhaps a lack of competition in the Ukiah area, mainly because bidding contractors would have to travel quite a distance, qualified contractors, that is, would have to travel quite a distance. And there would be subsistence costs and so forth for them to take on a project in the Ukiah area. So that is the purpose of that market factor. We had previously reported it at 5%, but have increased it to 6.5% just based on what is seen in the market now. The estimate also includes escalation. Now we have to carry the escalation at the state's rate. The Department of Finance has a rate of 5% annually, and they don't allow any variations to that. So the estimate includes that escalation rate, which is currently escalated to the midpoint of construction. So that's adding about 8.4% to the construction cost. And then the last slide here gives you a summary. The column to the right there, the update today, shows you the summary basically of the cash match, the history of the cash match today, and various points along the progress of the project at which additional cash has been added to the project. The current local cash match, as I said earlier, is approximately 10.8 million. And I guess, Steve, I'll hand it back to you.
So today, we're asking your board to accept the latest cost estimate for the new jail, along with the draft resolution that we would be providing to the state in final form once we have actual costs based on bids that have been received. We'd like direction from your board to staff regarding additional general fund cash match that's going to be necessary in an amount estimated at 1.43 million. And we'd also like authorization for the project to proceed to bid as soon as approval is received from the State Department of Finance.
Okay, questions and comments from board members. Supervisor Williams?
Yeah, when this came to us last summer, I think my comment was the numbers are unrealistic, it'll cost more. And I think that's my comment today. I don't think we're done at 36.9 million. And it's only an illusion that the board has any control here. It's the construction industry and materials that are setting the price. This is a mandated service. The county's cheapest path is to comply. This is our cheapest path to complying with state and legal standards. I move the recommended action.
Second.
Supervisor Jurdy.
Yeah, I agree with the comments made. I just want to bring back a little context. So
The sheriff's office had applied for 2 grants that were unsuccessful there were a series, I believe, of 3 grant cycles that the state offered for counties to expand their jail to accommodate prisoners who previously would have been sent back into state prison, but instead were being sent to county jails, either for a parole violation or a relatively minor offense once released from state prison. And it was also specifically for county inmates who had serious behavioral health issues, to isolate that population in a new wing of county jails where they could get better care. And at the time of the 3rd grant cycle, the county hired, through the executive office, hired Nocton Lewis, professional architects, to shepherd this project. I believe the grant application was higher in the 3rd round because Nocton Lewis said we need more money. And we requested at the time $25 million from the state, $1 million from the county. That was Nocton Lewis's estimate of the project costs. I've noted that we may be about 1 year behind schedule at this point, but now the costs are being estimated by Nocton Lewis to be 42% higher than originally estimated. So I don't know if Nocton Lewis has any insurance policy or anything. To what extent do they validate when they're hired by customers that they are providing agencies with a good estimate when agencies submit a grant application? Because, for example, had we known that the costs were going to be substantially higher, we could have asked for a grant from the state for more than $25 million. We asked for $25 million because Nocton Lewis said the project would cost $26 million. And it required a minimal county match. At this point, the county match is, ballooned from $1 million to about, I think it's about 12 at this point or more. So, I really wonder about the ethical practices of Nocton Lewis, if they're that far off the mark. I realize that we are going through a period of unprecedented escalation in construction costs and building materials costs. I still, in spite of that, can't believe that they should have been off by 42%. And just finally, ultimately, I really feel like the county needs to make a full court press to go back to the state and say, hey, this is your program. You're realigning people from state prisons into county jails. It's in the best interest of the public that we do that. But it's not bearable for the county, a small, poor, rural county like Mendocino County, to pay so much of the share of this project that was really originally a state project. So I know that the county staff is working on a timeline and a budget that shows the escalation of the costs. And I really think that we need to all follow up on that, from the sheriff's office, from the executive office, from the board. Every time we're talking to Assemblymember Wood, Senator McGuire, the governor's office, this needs to be one of our top priorities. I know that when Supervisor McGordy and I met recently with Assemblymember Wood, at the end of last year, we brought this up, and he was interested in learning more from the county. So it's really just a matter, I feel, of the county following up and not seeing ourselves as victims, but being advocates for this project. It is a good project. It is in the public interest to build this wing where these clients of the jail will have better service. They'll be safer jailers working in the jail. The medical staff will be safer. It's an improvement for the public, but really the state needs to step it up and provide a bigger cost share.
Supervisor Haschak.
Well, I totally agree with those comments, and I do think that we need to step up our game in putting the pressure on our state representatives. If there's a escalation of the 5% that the state is mandating, then there should be that escalation to the original grant of the 25 million too. If we could get something like that, and I hope that, I think Sheriff Kendall has been working on this, and CEO Antle. I think we all need to be in communication with our elected representatives so that we can find a solution, because we have to do this project, but we don't have the real resources to do it. So we're in a bind right now.
Mr. Fadness, do you care to answer Supervisor Jordy's comments about your original estimate versus what we're facing today?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for asking the question. Well, first of all, maybe just a clarification. When the county applied for the grant, The grant through the SB 844 legislation has a limitation on the amount that you can apply for. So the limit was 25 million. So you applied for the maximum amount allowed for small counties. So any additional cost to the project would have to come out of county cash match. Another point to make here is that you're correct that we do not control the construction market. We do our best to estimate the ongoing escalation in costs. We work with our cost estimator to understand the market conditions at the time that the estimates are created, but we don't have the crystal ball to predict the escalation that's occurring now with inflation, supply chain delays, and so forth. I'd also like to point out that we don't control the state's process, and the delays to the project have largely been due to state delays in approving the ground lease for the project. That took well over a year of processing for that to occur, and we were held up in our timeframes to complete the construction documents while those processes were occurring. And then recently with the State Fire Marshal's office, as many other counties are experiencing delays with State Fire Marshal review and approval, you're not alone, but we can't control that process. That is a process that only the State Fire Marshal has control of. So their timeframes for reviews and ultimate approval is there. So anyway, I guess that would be my response. We are doing our best to keep track of the costs and to update the costs at the major milestones. And unfortunately, where we're at today, the costs have increased significantly, and mainly because of the delays and because of the current market. So, thank you.
Any other board comments or questions? I have a question for CEO Antle. So looking at our new bill for this, any thoughts about how we're going to afford this?
Thank you, Chair McGorty. The team is working on that. We hope that the 22 books will be 23 books will be closed soon, and we will have an estimate of carry forward. And we will be coming forward with a workshop for 22-23 on January 24th, your next board meeting, for further discussions to find these funding.
I'd just like to comment as the chair that this is a real horror show of signing up for something that you don't really know the price for, and it just keeps escalating, making it very, very difficult for us to meet all of the other things that we want to do for the county, including taking care of our employees. And by the same token, we recognize the importance of taking care of people who are incarcerated, because one lawsuit can result in multi-million dollars of liability to us. So I just want the public to understand the difficult position we're in, and we're trying to take a responsible route that's both humane and fiscally conservative, and we may not please everybody, but I feel like we have to go forward with this, that there's no other way, especially when you look at the condition of the jail. Anybody who doesn't like our actions today, schedule a tour and see the conditions that people are presently being held in. And I think that will help form a good opinion for you of why the importance of making this happen. Is there any public comment? Is there any comment online? Okay, barring none.
Chair, I have a comment.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
So I agree with my colleagues that we should get every dollar that we can from the state. We're broke. And at the same time, I recognize that this is more deferred maintenance. This board is cleaning up the mess of previous boards. The county knew back in 1985 that it needed to put money into the jail. And I don't see that that ever happened. It was kicked down the road until finally there's no more kicking at hand. And we're the ones that have to clean it up. And it's really hard because I imagine all 5 of us came on with ideas of what we wanted to work on. And instead, we're straddled with mostly working on cleaning up the legacy. And there's just a few pennies left. Maybe there's nothing left. We may be running a deficit for all I know, but we're not able to move forward in any of the directions on projects that we're passionate about, because whether it's pension debt or deferred maintenance on the jail or telecommunications, every direction we look, it's about deferred maintenance work that should have been done in past years. I think one thing we can try to do is commit to not continuing that legacy, that when we leave this board, the county should be in better shape, it should be caught up. And I hope we're making decisions in that direction.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Williams. I feel exactly the same way, and I think this board has not shied from kicking cans down the road. I've been impressed with the group of 4 people who I work with that recognize issues that haven't been dealt with, and a lot of times they're not dealt with because they're either not understood or they're not, something that plays well with the electorate. But I think that everybody here on this board has taken their responsibility very seriously to address issues. So, and this is one of them, and we have to deal with it. So with that, we do have Sheriff Kendall has a comment. Sheriff.
Thank you, Chair McGordy. I appreciate the comments that all of our board members have made on this, because they are echoing exactly what my concerns are. Now, I had a meeting with Assemblyman Wood this Saturday. We were at another function together, and so I began discussing just kind of on the surface this issue, and we'd spoken in the past about it. He seemed extremely supportive of a continued conversation on this. I just left the meeting to step back into the virtual board meeting here, where I met with several other sheriffs in Northern California and Southern California, and we were discussing just this exact same issue. And as the state of California is beginning to, for lack of better terms, step away from many of the responsibilities that they had in the past, I think that they are working on some unrealistic numbers. We are seeing a reduction in the state prison population that is probably, based on what I can see, very reliant on some of the COVID precautions that were taken, and those numbers are going to jump back up. And when that occurs, I think that we've all got to be ready. And so I will continue to work with my colleagues, state sheriffs, as well as our elected officials at the state, so that we can see what kind of relief small counties such as ours can get on these things. Because a lot of these large counties, when they have hundreds of millions of dollars that go towards a lot of these things, where Mendocino County, $2 million, it might as well be all the money in the world if you don't have it. And so I'll continue to push on that. I will continue to work with my colleagues as well as our elected officials. But I think that we all need to sit down, be on the same page, and really make our voices heard, that these are the things that are needed. For a lot of different reasons, but a lot of it are because the state had stepped away from some of their standard responsibilities. And if they're going to step away from them, then they need to make the people whole who are going to be doing these things. Thank you.
No, thank you for your perspective as the person who will be in charge of this facility when it's completed, and has been a long-term employee, and has recognized the needs of the jail and the population of inmates in it. So we appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to call for the question.
All right, I have the recommended action. Mover is Supervisor Williams, and the seconder is Supervisor Mulhern. Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
Supervisor Jurdy?
Yes.
Supervisor Haschak?
Yes.
And Chair McGordy?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Moving down the agenda, so we have the Chief Executive's report, and I understand there is no report today. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then agenda item 4K is discussion and possible action, including review, adoption, amendment, consideration, or ratification of legislation pursuant to the adopted legislative platform.
It's a standing item that's been withdrawn.
Okay, very good. All right, so next is agenda item 4L, Supervisors Report regarding board special assignments, standing and ad hoc committee meetings, and other items of general interest. So I invite anyone who has a report.
In light of the discussion we had earlier, one of our ad hocs, at least one, has been meeting quite regularly. That's the ad hoc Supervisor Mulhern and myself on the tax share agreement discussions with the cities. And we've had, I think we've had maybe 5 meetings just with city staff or county staff, and with most recently with a tax lawyer who specializes in annexations and tax share agreements. And we've also had, I think at this point, 4 meetings maybe with the cities over the past 6 months. And we're definitely making progress on trying to get a good handle on the proposal that was drafted by the cities, how it potentially would have impacts if it were to be implemented. And I am hopeful that we have more meetings scheduled already. I'm hopeful that we can bring something to the board, I don't know, 2 to 3 months from now, pretty soon.
Supervisor Mulhern, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that Supervisor Journey covered it, but I would also just do an update on another board that we serve together, which is the Mendocino Solid Waste Management Authority. And 2 board members from the cities of Fort Bragg and Ukiah were either retired or were not reelected back to their agencies. So this week, the city councils of Ukiah and Fort Bragg should be appointing new individuals to serve on that board, and then we'll be able to meet again and continue a negotiation process to figure out how to best serve the public through that agency.
Supervisor Haschak.
I don't have any report on ad hocs, but I would like to report that in the city of Willits, we have a resident, Edie Cicerelli, who is now the oldest person in the United States, and I think the 4th oldest person in the world. So we're doing our part for the Blue Zones. And her birthday, her 115th birthday, will be celebrated on February 5th.
That is awesome for someone to live that long. Any other reports or supervisor comments? Well, I can't believe it, but I think it is time to adjourn the meeting, being no further business.
I would like to thank the chair on running a very efficient meeting.
I think it's more a question of the short agenda that we had, but anyway, thank you very much. I'll accept it. With that, I would call the meeting adjourned.
At 11:08.